Oh, snap. What up, party peoples? Bobo here with BrassReel Brothers. Thanks for coming back for another little live stream here. We're going to be talking about Day Shift on Netflix, a new vampire horror comedy. And with me, as always, with these chats is my boy, Andrew. What it do, Gucci Shoe?
What's up?
Oh, yes.
I'm in the house tonight.
Yeah, man, we are so white, aren't we? Good God. Well, we just watched Day Shift. So what'd you think about that, man?
Man, it was enjoyable. It was definitely. I didn't really know much about it, but going in, except for what the trailer said, and I mean, it was enjoyable. You know, if you're looking for just a movie to put on in the background, or even just a night chilling out, wanting some popcorn, wanting to just Netflix and chill. I mean, it was an enjoyable flick.
Yeah, I had a good time with it as well. I feel like there were certain things that were just really awesome about it, and then there were certain things that were just kind of, I hate to say it this way, but suffer from sort of like streaming platform blockbusteritis. Does that make sense? Like these guys like this movie here, which, you know, it looks like it has all the appeal and everything, and it has all the blockbuster look right away to it. I just don't feel like they have that formula down fully yet. Kind of the same thing with the Amazon Prime stuff with Chris Pratt. It's like I haven't watched the Terminal List yet, but see, that's a show. That's not a movie. So I'm talking about the big blockbuster type movies. I don't think they've quite figured out the formula yet. Like Tomorrow War had really good moments with the action. But when it came down to sort of the character parts and the movement of the story itself, it's like, y'all haven't figured this quite out yet for a blockbuster style of a film, you know?
Well, I mean, I guess that begs the question of, is it ever going to be the blockbuster type film if it's immediately put on a streaming network?
Well, that's what they're trying to make, though. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that might be what they're trying to make, but you know, you're sitting there saying that it's just not working for any of these streaming platforms to put an original movie that
I don't think it's not working. I just think that it's like they haven't quite gotten there yet. They're not quite to the point of, man, we've got this figured out. Like, for example, after Iron Man, Marvel, up until Endgame, pretty much had it figured out, man. They were kind of fail safe. You know what I mean? And then now it's kind of become this thing to where they're too much of a machine to where it's like, oh, you lost your way a little bit. But in the beginning, it was just like, bam, bam, bam. They had it figured out. The formula was there for every part of it. You got moved in the movie to where you would get emotional, but also the action was blowing you away. You were seeing these superheroes in a way that you never thought that you could see them on screen. And you're like, you truly are blown away every movie. And now it's gotten to the point to where it's just, we've seen it so much. And that, you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, but you also got to remember, I mean, like Tomorrow War was number 1 on streaming platforms when it came out.
No, it was.
Prey, I think, just broke all kinds of
streaming. Now, Prey is the first, to me, Prey is the best quality straight to streaming movie that I've seen yet, like thus far.
Yeah, I mean, there was arguments that it should have been a theatrical release.
A lot of people are saying that.
Yeah, for sure. This one, I mean, it's kind of hard to know how it would have done being straight to theaters as opposed to just going straight to Netflix. I guess we'll never know that kind of stuff. But for the sake of just a streaming, an original streaming network movie platform, I think it was just fine.
Yeah, it was fun. But I do have
we got some critiques for sure.
Yeah. So first off, you have a good time with it. Dave Franco's funny in it. Jamie Foxx has, some funny one-liners in it. I never found myself like busting out, gut busting laughing like in, first time you saw Old School or Wedding Crashers. There's moments where you literally are just like dying laughing. Never had those moments in here. I will say, when they were focused on the action was pretty badass.
Oh yeah, and I don't know if this is labeled as a comedy, so I wasn't expecting to laugh out loud like an old school, like you just pointed out. But you're gonna have Dave Franco and Jamie Foxx, those two guys, and Snoop Dogg. Come on, there's gonna be some laughs in that in this movie. But the focus was not the comedy.
It wasn't.
It was, to me, it was like a it was like the lure of the vampires that you see in True Blood.
Very much that lore of True Blood vampire.
With the feel of like Blade meets Lost Boys.
Yeah, but also very focused on that sort of Cali West Side vibe.
Yeah.
And it also had like a Men in Black tone to where it's like it's a world where vampires exist, but not everybody is aware of them.
Right. Yeah. Unlike True Blood, I mean, you got vampires who are politicians.
Right.
In this, not everybody even knows that vampires are around, but there's like a whole union of people who are formed to fight vampires and to try to make sure that you're keeping the streets clean and keeping the crime scene,
like Men in Black.
Like Men in Black. So yeah.
So I definitely was, seeing a lot of parallels from other movies, and we should have done our research on this before we started this, and I meant to, but I got distracted. But the Russo brothers, when they did Extraction on Netflix, and then they also did The Gray Man recently with Ryan Gosling and Chris Evans, and Chris Hemsworth was in Extraction. They were very clear when they were making those movies. And if you haven't seen those movies, the action alone is worth watching those movies just because it's very exhilarating, it's thrilling. And just like the action was in this movie. But they made it clear when they made Extraction that they were starting sort of a kind of using, they didn't say this verbatim, I'm definitely paraphrasing here, but Extraction was kind of a calling card for their new action stunt choreography company. So from the way I understand it, like let's say for Extraction, they directed that movie, and the same thing with The Gray Man. So they were probably a part of everything. But let's say if they did this movie, which I feel like that their production company, their action sequence production company, did the sequences in this movie, it just looks like it. Like they come in and they sort of direct, like the director of this movie will tell them, hey, this is what we want to do. We're looking for a chase scene that these things happen. And then their company is like, all right, we have the tools and all the drones that can fly these awesome cameras. We have the ingenuity to get these crazy camera shots. Like in this one, if you notice, there was one point where you have like a camera from underneath the shock of the vehicle perspective.
That was a
landing.
Badass shot.
Oh, it was awesome. And all those shots were awesome. So I feel like that those guys come in and sort of take over those shots. Mm-hmm. And in this movie, it was very noticeable. I felt like as soon as they got done with the action, it sort of jumped back and felt like this other movie kind of.
Yeah, I mean the middle of the movie when you got these car chases,
and really good, by the way, really good char cases.
It was. I think you pointed out while we were watching this, like, man, this is very much reminiscent of like
Winter Soldier and
Captain America's Civil War and The Gray Man, and even there was another one you mentioned too. And I was like, I totally see what you mean. Yeah, it's got to be the same stunt team, the same Russo brothers, like you said. And that I think that might be the best part of the movie, to be honest, is the what they did with those car chases, and the fight sequences.
The set of brothers, the two Russian brothers or whatever.
I could watch a whole series. I could watch a whole movie about those two those two vampire hunters. I mean, they put Blade to shame.
Yeah, they did.
Badass.
There was a set of brothers that they were Russian, and that's the thing. In this world, there are vampire hunters, and like you said, there's a union for them and all that. But these guys pull up and they have this van that's like big. It's like a military van that's like rocking all this music, but they have all this gear and equipment, and they end up teaming up with Jamie Foxx and them. And it's just like he said, I could have watched the whole movie with them.
One of the guys is Scott Adkins, who Bobby pointed out is Van Damme's like protege. who's been in a lot of works with Dolph Lundgren a lot.
And
But
he's his protege within the acting world. He was a martial artist before he made his way to Van Damme, but Van Damme was always sort of like his idol and stuff like that. And then they ended up working together and doing a lot of stuff.
Yeah, and the other guy is I forget his name. It's something Howie, but he was in like the Reba McEntire show,
The sitcom.
yeah, the sitcom. So he was like the comedic. He was the goofy, good looking, funny guy. And this one, he's like buff and he's just like kicking ass. And so that was kind of cool to see that. But I'm like the martial arts and the choreography with just those two brothers was that was badass. And like I said, I could watch those two dudes in another film just kicking vampire ass, teaming up with Blade or some shit, you know?
Yeah, I mean they were definitely entertaining, and they had quippy one-liners, and of course they were just like, "Nice one, bro."
Yeah,
good kill, bro.
As they slice and dice on the vampires
and annihilate everybody. And look, we said, it says spoiler on the video, so I can tell you this. One of the things that, depending on the tone of the movie, that sometimes can really work or sometimes can be slightly disappointing. Sometimes, they got to kill off a certain badass at one point so they can be heroic and have their day. That's like, oh, I sacrificed it. And I was kind of worried that those brothers were going to get killed at some point, but no, they didn't. They just did their thing and went on their way. And so I was like, yeah, but I wish they would have come back.
Yeah. The disappointing part was not that they got bit or something like that, or died, but that you saw them for the 20 minutes that you saw them, and then they weren't there at the end.
But yeah, it would have been great to have some sort of callback to them, because that would have just been funny. It would have been a funny moment just to see them again. They're like, oh, look who's here, because you already loved them at this point because of their stint in the film. I mean, I definitely was enjoying myself with the movie.
It got confusing for a little bit because Dave Franco plays a guy who works for the Union, and he's having to tag along with Jamie Foxx's character, who is trying to get back in the Union because apparently there's a thing where if you kill a vampire and you pull their fangs out, those fangs can be worth a lot of money. Okay. And the Union pays you the most money for those fangs, but Jamie Foxx had been kicked out of the Union, so he was trying to get back in the Union. So here comes Dave Franco. Well, I have to shadow you as part of the Union protocol, and he's like, F your protocol, man. Like if it wasn't for your protocol, we'd be dead today, And so anyway, you make a lot. You can make a lot of money selling the vampire fangs. And the older they are, the more money it's worth. And so that's kind of a cool concept, I guess. But I don't really remember where I was going with
Well,
this.
and when you were saying it got kind of confusing too, because it did. They started explaining all these different vampire classes, but they just kind of make you aware of the classes. They don't tell you what they are, why they're that way, how they got that way.
Yeah.
So
they call it like an Uber. You're an Uber vampire. Like
there's an Uber blood, then there was a spider
blood,
and then it was all these different things. And the way they give you that exposition in the movie, they just kind of brush over it really fast. And I think that's what you were trying to point out, that it was confusing. They kind of threw a lot of this specific vampire lore at you that mattered in the story, but they threw it all at you so fast that you couldn't quite grasp it all. It's like, okay, wait, what? Why is this one alive? Okay, why is this one evil? Why is this one able to not be evil and able to just choose to be good still? And because even spoiler alert, Dave Franco gets his head chopped off in this, but he doesn't die.
He becomes a vampire. He wasn't, and then suddenly he ends up lunging at Jamie Foxx's character after they've already established being friends.
And Jamie Foxx is a machete master.
Yeah, but then he gets turned, and then he lunges at Jamie Foxx. He cuts his head off, and he's like, "Damn it, man! I don't have to do that to you." But then he survives. He starts reattaching his head. And he's like, "What the fuck?" And it's like, well, and then he's able to like maintain the good guy that he was. Except he's a vampire now. It's like, well, there's not been any establishment beforehand of these vampires who are good. So where's this coming from?
Yeah. And the fact that he gets his head cut off and then he's still twitching and moving. And then he's able to put his own head back on himself while he's talking to himself to be able to put his own head back on.
Yeah.
But then it's like, so if he can do that, why couldn't all these other vampires that were getting their heads chopped off do that? But then Andrew mentions like, well, it's probably because he was an Uber blood and he was turned he was a familiar, but then it's like, but they don't explain that well enough for us to even grasp any of that and put the pieces like, oh, it's because of this and this and that. You're kind of like, wait, what?
The best I could come up with was if you're someone who's turned and middle aged like we are, then we might have the ability to kind of fight off or be unpredictable as to what we might turn into, as opposed to somebody being born into a vampire. I mean, that's the best I could come up with the explanation.
Yeah. And even then, I feel like we can still find holes in that logic.
Right. And then one of the girls says, well, they turned you with using Uber blood, so you're going to be erratic and unpredictable. Well, what is Uber blood?
Yeah. How are we supposed to put that? Oh, okay. That's why he's so erratic and unpredictable.
And why would they turn you with Uber blood as opposed to the blood of the person who like bit you? So all that was just getting a little too convoluted, and I was just kind of like, some of that's moving so fast I wasn't able to catch up.
Yeah, and I was the same. I totally agree with you, and I think that that's one of the things that I told you that was one of my little complaints when we were done watching it is I feel like it was trying to be like kind of this emotional story about a father trying to save his family, but it was also wanting to be kind of quirky with vampires that exist and sort of in that Men in Black comedy style. But then it also was trying to sort of be like Training Day a little bit, have these fast paced elements, but it's like just when they get you rolling and get you kind of in that high energy, like for example, say what you will about the movie Crank, but that movie's kind of cool because the first one. But once it starts get going, it's literally like you're on meth. You know what I mean? Like as an audience member, the movie is just reeling, man. It's just going. It's like it does not stop. And I feel like this movie could have been better if it would have had more of that tone. Like, you remember, because he had a deadline to get to this money. Well, if the deadline could have been shorter and he had to do all these different things and all these different situations started backing themselves up to each other that were just crazy action sequences mixed with comedy and awesome lines, I feel like it would have just sold better for this craziness of the film that it already was. You know what I mean? But for it to have these moments of taking a beat, and then he goes back to the ex-wife's house and talks to her a little more again, and then they get some more. It just, the severity of it didn't feel as hot. Whereas remember Training Day, the first time you saw that movie?
Oh yeah,
dude, that's one of those movies that everybody can remember. Oh yes, Training Day. I remember that movie just took you for a ride, and it's just about two cops, doing their thing.
Yeah. Well, I guess it does have that feel. Where it's just it's actually it's two cops. One's a vampire hunter and one is a douchebag who works for a union. That the vampire hunter starts having a little bit of fun with until he gets turned into a vampire. But back to the car chase stuff, man. There's a lot of really cool moments where like you can obviously tell it's a drone that is like following along with these cars or watching them from above. I mean, it was really spectacular stuff for a straight to streaming film.
It's literally one of those things. Like if it was just on in the background and you were at someone's house and they had the volume turned down, if it were on those scenes of those action scenes with those drone shots following these cars, switching from cars, then that upper level of motorcycles, then going under stuff and following this guy. I mean, you would be like, what are y'all watching? Yeah. Turn this is awesome.
Yeah, it's very Fast and Furious in a way.
But better. Definitely better.
Yeah, well, because they weren't like, jumping building to building in the air and trying to go to space.
Yeah, the only really unrealistic thing about this is that they're fighting vampires, Other than that, they do try to follow like a set of real life rules.
They do have this thing with the vampires where they have like specially made sunblock, so some of them can actually walk in the daytime, or one of them, like the main villain, is walking around the daylight with an umbrella, and I was like, well, shit, where was that in like Blade?
Oh, yeah, Blade.
Yeah.
But somebody always comes up with some other gimmick, for the vampire stuff. It's like, oh, why didn't I think of that? That's totally cool. Like some sort of rule or something that's a part of the lore.
And she cries when they cry blood. Or
like true blood,
or like black tears, which is very true blood.
And all their blood was black too. None of their blood was red. It was all black blood. I don't know if you noticed that.
Yeah.
All the vampires. They I was going to say something about some of that lore that we were just talking about, but
kind of like how you pointed out how when we were watching about how I guess like in True Blood, if they didn't want to feed on people, that's what V was for.
Right. So they could make the decision.
Right. So that's, I guess, in a sense, there's some vampires who were choosing to try to live normal lives by just having blood, but you never see that at all until James Franco's character turns and he actually becomes a vampire, but he's not immediately just blood hungry.
Yeah. No, for sure. Dave Franco.
I'm sorry.
No, I almost said it a couple times. It's kind of hard to believe that like that's the one that's ended up having a successful career. Like it was James Franco that had all these hits, and all of a sudden he's just abolished in Hollywood because of everything.
Well, Dave is getting behind the camera now too, though.
Mm-hmm. Well, I still haven't watched The Rental. I thought that I had watched it, but it wasn't. I think it was The Rent House that I had watched. Because I saw the trailer for The Rental.
The Rental, and there's the Rent House.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. And I thought that I'd seen and then I realized when I saw the preview the other night for The Rental, I was like, I haven't seen this.
Well, no, him and James Franco just got. He's going to be playing the Cuban dictator. What's his name?
Castro?
Yeah.
Who is Dave?
James Franco got cast as a Fidel Castro in some sort of upcoming biopic.
Oh wow, that's interesting.
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
I have no idea when that's coming out, but I did just hear about that. Anyways, but so yeah, and then Snoop Dogg. we got to talk about Snoop Dogg, especially his outfits.
He looked like I don't. They didn't say this, but it seemed like to me he was dressed like Creighton Duke from Jason Goes to Hell.
That's totally what it is.
It has to be. It has to have been. And then Snoop's got his Gatling gun that says Big Bertha, which they could have come up with a cooler name than Big Bertha, right?
I mean, that had to be an homage to something.
Something, yeah. I'm sure it meant something to somebody, so they were like, let's put this in there.
Yeah.
I mean, look, I have to be honest. First off, I love Snoop. Snoop already wins just by being on the screen. I love him. I think he's awesome. He's just so cool. But I kind of did expect more like funny one-liners and stuff from him, like cool, funny, Snoop shit. But instead, they made him a little bit more like an action hero.
Yeah, an old man action hero. I mean, he does. I mean, it was not him. It was it was a stunt double. But he does like this. He does like the spinning air kick. Because he's supposed to be some washed up vampire hunter who's just getting a little old for his age and for this time, and he does this aerial kick or whatnot and hits this vampire, and he says, that was my weak leg.
Yeah, that was my weak leg. And all Snoop, mannerisms and fashion is all up in there. And man, I tell you what, Snoop his hair is getting long, dude. Like, he's been growing it out for a while now. I mean, it's like down to his ass. Like it's all dreaded up, but like I remember when he started actually fully growing it. Because I remember at one point you could see it's like, man, you getting some little scragglies, and then you're like, oh, you're growing that shit.
Yeah. And he's letting the gray get out there too.
Oh yeah. Like he doesn't care. But man, he's been around, dude.
Oh yeah.
Give it up. I mean, the Godfather rap for sure. And fitting as it could possibly be, the movie is all up in the West Coast. There's West Coast, old school West Coast 90s music throughout. And then it ends with a Snoop and Nate Dogg song, like straight up as Snoop's walking away. Like you start hearing this Nate Dogg and then Snoop starts rapping. I mean, it's definitely an homage to the 90s West Coast vibe.
Well, that's where I got the Lost Boys feeling as well.
For sure.
Because that was also San Fernando Valley.
You see the damn Lost Boys guy with the saxophone?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Where was he?
That was from Remembering Eastbound and Down. He was like, man, y'all should have been to this party. It was fucking badass, man. Had the saxophone player from Lost Boys there.
It was the only thing missing from this movie. I mean, dude, the only reason I say Lost Boys is not just because it's like in the valley, and it just had a little bit of that feel to it, but also they gave Snoop that fucking line at the end. You think he's dead and he's not dead. He comes out of the sewer, and the final line from the film is he pops up from the sewer after you're thinking he's dead. He pulls out a freaking blunt.
Well, and then what puts one in his ear and then lights the other one.
Yeah, and he says, "One thing I love about L.A. all the damn vampires."
Yeah, he's like all the damn vamps or something like that. Yeah.
So I'm obviously not saying.
Yeah, or paraphrasing.
Yeah,
but...
I'm obviously not talking like Snoop, but
No, you sounded just like him.
Oh, did I?
But I mean, it was fun. So I mean, overall, I wouldn't say. I'd just say it was a B, maybe a B minus.
I would maybe give it a B.
I feel like C's too harsh.
I would give it a B minus.
I think C is just a little too harsh. I'd say it's about a B minus. Nobody. I mean, the only complaint is what we said before. I feel like it was just a little rushed at certain points. They were trying to stack a lot of lore in there for you to like put these pieces together, and it was like,
and it's a 2-hour movie. They had plenty of time to kind of slow things down, but I think maybe they feared that if they slowed down the pacing of the movie with the action, they would lose interest. So they rushed all the discussion about the lore of the vampires,
right.
was just like what?
See, but I feel like that's like, while I loved that action in the movie and it was great, I still feel like that they could have. I didn't want them to take action out, but if it would have made room for more character development and more exposition naturally throughout, then I prefer that.
Yeah, I mean, okay, so the opening scene, you got Jamie Foxx walking into a house and he kills an old lady. But it turns out she's not an old lady. She's just a 90-year-old vampire, and she's a brutal bitch.
And it's this crazy like contortion artist for sure, like in real life fight. Like it's not like a CGI deal. Right. It's a real like stunts going on.
Yeah, I think you're right. They totally used a what is it? Contortion?
A contortion artist.
They totally used a contortionist or contortion artist.
Or contortionist, same thing.
For all that sort of stuff. Well, as it turns out, the main villain vampire, who is a younger woman. That 90-year-old woman was her daughter.
Yeah.
So it's like, so you've been around for 300 years, and then you had a daughter who you let age to the age of 90, and then turned her. How long have y'all been doing this?
And then how long have y'all both been alive?
Yeah. So that alone is that's what I mean. Why I was like a little like, not only the uber blood and the whatever blood. And these types of vampires, but is also that like, wow, what?
Yeah, I think that just my opinion, and this is not me passing like judgment towards the film, but for me, I would have preferred they have toned down, simplified the vampire lore stuff, just make it some sort of a simple thing instead of it like, you didn't really need us to find out about the Ubers and the spider heads and all that. And and I'm just spitballing here, was it really necessary to have James Franco turn into a vampire and die?
Dave Franco.
Yeah, see, I just did it. But was it necessary though? Like, couldn't he have just survived and helped him and been the nerdy dude the whole time and had gone through more funny situations? Like, if they wouldn't have done that, then we wouldn't have had to have any explanation from the different breeds of vampires with the familiars and all that stuff. They could have just been fighting vampires. You know what I'm saying?
I mean, it would have been interesting to see where it went with that. But I guess a contrasting thing for that was the very uptight, by the book union, company man that Dave Franco was playing, that Jamie Foxx is constantly making fun of. Like, I don't, fuck your rules. We would die if it wasn't for your rules.
Mm-hmm.
And then he turns into a vampire and ends up having to break all these rules to help everything that's has transpired. So I guess it was kind of a character arc for Dave Franco.
But I still feel like he could have had that arc anyways, and like,
yeah, I mean, you're right. He could have had that character arc anyways. We're realizing like, hey man, these rules are fucking bogus. Like, the only way that I would have lived tonight is to break these stupid rules, and then tell his boss like, I'm quit. I'm a field guy now. I'm not doing this.
Yeah, they could have done like a deal where he's like, he finally decides to report in, and that jerk of a boss guy could have been like, leave him there, or set the bomb and leave him there, and he could have like had his change. You know what? You guys are asshole. These guys are my friends now, and something like that. But instead, they went this route to me that they made him an undead vampire that gets his head chopped off. That picks it. Nobody else is doing this, mind you. He's the only one in this whole movie that does this. That's kind of the thing that I was like, okay, why isn't any other vampire doing this shit?
Why wasn't any other vampire getting their head cut off and able to put it back on?
Right.
No, they're all dead after that. And he goes and cuts their fangs out.
But I mean, again, I know they were putting it there because it was sort of supposed to be a funny part of the movie, a funny addition to add on to. Oh, and you have a dead vampire friend that's trying to keep his head attached.
But I guess it kind of was funny to see that the like I said, that uptight, nerdy Franco character, and not even know how to use a gun, and talking about how guns kill people. You know, it's like what the fuck do you think these vampires are doing?
Yeah,
and and pissing his pants and getting made fun of.
Oh yeah, that's a
way.
huge deal. He pisses his
yeah.
pants multiple times in the movie,
and then become a quasi badass fighter once he's turned into a vampire.
Yeah, that's the thing too. If you guys didn't know, if you get bitten and turned into a vampire, you immediately know all kinds of parkour moves. You immediately know how to do like crazy jujitsu. So just letting y'all know, if you get turned into a vampire, that's what happens.
You're not wrong.
But hey, I think we said enough about that, man.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it. I think, it's one of those ones that for me, it's not like a must watch, but I think that for the Netflix originals, I had a lot of fun with this, more than I have with some of the other originals. If you like Fear Street, this one to me wasn't quite as good as part 1 and 2 of Fear Street, but I'd say it's about equally as good as part 1 and 3 of Fear Street, probably about equally as good as part 2 of Fear Street. And I'm just comparing those movies because those are Netflix originals as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So yeah, but we said it. B-.
B-. Yeah, I'll give it a B-.
All right, guys. Well, hey,
make sure you tune in tomorrow night. We're gonna have a talk about the Predator franchise with our boy.
Yeah. In fact, let me see. I wonder if I might have a. No, I do not have that. I thought I had a clip of the thumbnail, but I don't. So, anyways, yeah, we're gonna be doing the entire franchise, but we're not doing Alien versus Predator. We're just doing Predator, Predator 2, Predators, The Predator, and Prey. We already talked about Prey, but this is gonna be a little bit of a different conversation. This is just gonna us be literally having like a roundtable discussion about the franchise. We're not gonna sit here and try to specifically just break down every film. We're just gonna talk about what they did to the franchise, how it progressed it, maybe, and how it maybe slowed it down, what made them better, what made them worse, all that kind of stuff.
And maybe some things that you guys didn't know about.
Yeah, maybe some things you weren't aware of. And if you guys want to tune in and you got some info about any of the Predator franchise or shit like that, please do, because it's more fun when people join. That's for damn sure.
That's right.
Well, guys, love y'all to death. Hit that like button if you enjoyed the video. And also hit the subscribe button so you can help us make it to the top. And as always, if life gives you lemons,